Well, fully a third of New York voters haven't really seen or heard very much of anything about the crisis that's been going on in the state Senate over the last 2 weeks, which is a surprisingly high number. But 58% of New York voters have read or heard a lot or seen it in their newspapers or on the news and know what's going on there. But overall, New Yorkers, 84% of New York voters think that what's going on in the state Senate right now is bad for the people of New York. And more than 50% of New Yorkers think what's going on in the state Senate right now is an embarrassing farce. Well, it's interesting because right now what voters tell Siena is half of them, 49%, would like to see the state Senate controlled by a coalition of both parties, the Democrats and Republicans. Not surprisingly, Democrats would prefer to see the Democrats in control, Republicans would prefer to see the Republicans in control, but an overwhelming majority of independent voters truly want to see a coalition, and even a plurality of Republicans. 45% of Republicans say they would rather see the state Senate controlled by a coalition of both parties. Well, there are a number of very important issues out there that voters would like to see the state Senate address before they adjourn for the summer, which is scheduled to happen today. Top among them, property tax relief. Voters are really struggling and are looking to the legislature and the governor to provide property tax relief, but also reforming state government ethics, and I think particularly the problem going on in the state Senate highlights what voters feel is the need for ethics reform, reducing the cost of pensions for state and local government employees. Those are the top three issues, but for New York City voters, one of the key issues that they want the Senate to address is the issue of mayoral control of the New York City schools. Well, the top players in this Senate drama, from Malcolm Smith and Dean Skelos to certainly Pedro Espada and Hiram Monserrat, they still remain unknown to the majority of New York voters, but a sizable plurality of voters do know who they are and feel very negatively towards all of them, particularly Hiram Monserrat. 36% of voters have an unfavorable view of Monserrat, Senator Monserrat, compared to only 7% who have a favorable view of him. Back in March, the last time Siena asked, voters were split, mixed, right down the middle on both the Senate and the Assembly. Today, what voters tell Siena is 37% of voters have a favorable view of the Assembly, 47% have an unfavorable view, but it's far worse for the Senate. 29% have a favorable view of the state Senate compared to 62% who have an unfavorable view. And among those who've been watching this Senate leadership fight over the last 2 weeks more closely, only 18% have a favorable view compared to more than 3/4, 78%, who have an unfavorable view. Right now, New Yorkers are more pessimistic about the direction of the state that the state is headed in than they have ever been in a Siena poll. 63% of New Yorkers think the state is headed in the wrong direction, compared to only 24% who think we're on the right track. Worst numbers ever in a Siena poll. For the first time ever, every region of the state, every party in the state, and every age group in the state all think that the state, a majority of those groups, all think the state is headed in the wrong direction. Well, Governor Patterson has seen a very slight uptick in his rating among voters. Right now, 31% of voters have a favorable view of David Patterson compared to 57% who have an unfavorable view. That's up just slightly from the 27 to 60 unfavorable rating that the governor had last month. His job performance numbers also up a small bit. 20% have a positive view of the job that he's doing compared to 78% who have a negative view, up again slightly from 1881 last month. In terms of the governor's re-election chances, they're still not looking good for David Paterson. Only 15% of voters right now say they are prepared to elect David Paterson as governor in 2010, compared to 70% of voters who would prefer, quote, someone else, unquote. When matched up in a Democratic primary, he loses badly to Andrew Cuomo, and in a general election matchup, he loses badly to former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Well, the issue of same-sex marriage is one that is really in flux with a lot of swing voters in this state. 2 months ago, voters told Siena that they overwhelmingly supported it by a 14-point margin. Last month, voters told Siena that they were dead even on it, 46-46. This month, 50% of New York voters say they support same-sex marriage becoming law in the state, compared to 43% who oppose it.